I'm joined still by Josiah from the Pondering Politics channel. Let's dive right into this. I have a spectacular clip to play for you, and it's of Fox News host Neil Cavuto cutting away from a Trump speech to brutally fact-check him in the absolute worst of ways from Trump's perspective, best of ways from, journalism and facts perspective.
He's going to get a lot of hate mail.
Oh, yeah.
Get a lot of hate.
And that is something taken into consideration. In one sense, before I play this clip, just to say, it's strange to give someone credit for doing what mainstream media does every single day, but context matters. And he is on Fox News, and saying this will get him extra death threats and potential ratings loss from the MAGA contingent. With that being said, here is Neil Cavuto.
Went to Nevada.
All right, we're continuing monitoring the president's remarks, and I mean no offense to him or some of you might want to continue hearing, but I did have to say that even though the former president is entitled to his opinions, he's not entitled to his own set of facts. The market has indeed been going up, but having nothing to do with him and everything to do with this aggressive cut in interest rates, or just a hiking in interest rates that stabilized inflation, and of course the whole artificial intelligence phenomenon that has benefited NVIDIA and a host of companies that are making money hand over fist. So that whether you want to give Biden credit for that, has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Furthermore, he mentioned about gas prices out of whack, $6 a gallon. The national average right now is $3.26 a gallon. He went on to talk about the 2020 election and how that was rigged. This has been adjudicated many, many times, dozens of times. It's been investigated by everyone and his uncle. No fewer than 44 investigations launched, some of them by judges that were picked by Donald Trump himself, that found no evidence of that in the 7 battleground states where most of them were focused. Donald Trump lost each and every one of those states.
I thought initially that he was just going to fact check the stock market thing, and then he just listing them off.
I know, he could have kept going. He could have kept honestly, he probably, somebody in the back was like, take a breath, Neil, take a breath, please. But
they see live viewership.
Just depleting, no, come back. Yeah, that was brutal.
And isn't that weird? He said just very, very mild things. Stock market is not doing well because people expect Trump to get into office. So ridiculous.
He didn't even give Biden credit.
I was going to get to that. Really? All of these Fox hosts, even Neil Cavuto, were reporting on the Trump economy and it's so amazing stock market. Oh my gosh, blushing. And then Biden is overseeing something far more remarkable, let me just say, which is not taking over a good economy and not messing it up for 3 years and then all falling apart, but taking over a bad economy in the middle of a social, public health, and economic crisis and taking that to a really strong place, where unemployment's better than we saw under the Trump administration before the pandemic even, where wage growth is stronger, adjusted for inflation under Joe Biden than it was under Donald Trump, and where the stock market's breaking records. Again, after a bleeping crisis, people.
Right. And listen.
And then that's something about AI or...
Because here's the thing. If you want to be super good faith and super fair and say, listen, the president of the United States, no president is single-handedly responsible for economic success or failure, fine, that's true, but apply the same standard. So if you were, as Luke points out, foisting praise, oh my God, Donald Trump just single-handedly built the American economy from scratch. The country was not founded in 1776. It was actually founded in 2017 when Donald Trump built it from nothing.
First day of the rest of your life.
Yeah. If you want to go that, then I would argue you are morally and intellectually obligated to foist praise, even more praise on President Biden. But you know what? To your point, listen, he didn't say don't give Biden credit. He just said if you don't want to give Biden credit, fair enough, but you cannot give credit to Donald Trump.
I've stopped asking for honesty from Republicans, okay? Especially those who are leaders. Could you just be consistent? Can you be consistently dishonest rather than inconsistently dishonest? It doesn't make any sense to run a campaign on the economy is horrible. Everything is going to hell. And also, it's good because of me.
Right?
No. Okay? That's ridiculous. With that being said, there are actually a few recent examples of Neil Cavuto. You see this sort of the Chris Wallace sort of, all right, this is getting too much. This is too ridiculous. And then they start speaking more and more truth in a more and more blunt fashion. And so let me walk you through a few recent examples, starting with this.
So if it's Lara Trump, the daughter-in-law of Donald Trump, some people wince at that and think, all right, that's a little too close to the family. How do you feel about that if it ends up being her?
Well, again, at the end of the day, what's good for the party? We need to put together a team that makes sure that we can win. And that's what this is all about, whether it's in the political department, whether it's with how we get our message out, how we do our fundraising, our joint finance efforts, putting everybody in the best place where they can be to bring their talents to the table to make sure that we win. And that's what I'm all about.
All right, but what's to stop people from thinking she would do her father-in-law's bidding and anything to help him, maybe not the party?
So credit to Cavuto again there, but on the Lara Trump thing, if you're not familiar, Trump is advocating and very likely going to be able to successfully get Lara Trump as a co-chair of the Republican National Committee. And imagine this small part of me wants Biden to go, hey, we're going to put Hunter Biden as the co-chair of the Democratic National Committee.
Can you imagine? But Luke, listen, I understand that's what Trump wants, but what if the Republicans tell him no?
Very likely.
Very likely. Definitely not going to happen.
Oof. And then next clip here.
But Congressman, didn't that package really, I'm sorry, sir, but didn't that package really fail because Donald Trump didn't want it? And many in your party, I'm not saying you are, sir, are scared stiff of the guy. You didn't want to offend him. You didn't want to tick him off. So that was why it died.
Well, what if I told you, Neil, this is a lucrative topic and everybody wants to just mine it, nobody wants to solve it? That's all fun and games, but what if you're Little Old Eagle Pass or Uvalde or San Antonio or New York City or Boston or Denver or anywhere else in the country? I think Americans have had enough with the politics, and we're not going to wait until a new president comes to solve it. Let's solve it today. This is something
wasn't that the chance that both parties had, sir, with this interim agreement? It wasn't perfect, to your fine point. But the fact that Donald Trump didn't like it, many in your party didn't want to fight him. They're scared of him, or he's bedeviling them, or I don't know, he's going to come back and do something horrible. I don't know what it is. And that's what blew it up.
It fell apart, and I'm of the mindset we have to do something today. House Republicans should take a down payment on border security in 24, and we come back for the rest in 25. And I'm committed to not stopping until that happens. And I'll work with anyone as long as it's meaningful. It can't just be.
Josiah, the border bill, that whole saga, if you saw my show, broke my brain a little bit. I cover American politics. I should be used to it. Okay, whatever. I get it. Luke, you're naive. Yes, I am. Okay, apparently. Because I was actually surprised by that Republicans shot down the bill they've been dreaming of and asking for, and the bill that Border Patrol endorsed, the Border Patrol Union, and then somehow have the gall to go out after that and say the border is one of the major issues that should motivate voters to vote for Donald Trump instead of Biden.
Yeah, so I was not surprised. I was actually surprised, if anything, that it took that long. Because here's the thing, and this is why, folks, I've said it on my Twitter page, I've said it in videos, I say it time and time again, I'm transparent about it. I'm unapologetically progressively partisan. I am unapologetically partisan for the Democrats, but there's a good reason for it, and it's stuff like this. You can have your beef with the Democrats. Democrats are not perfect. They never will be. They never have been. But they do, in good faith, genuinely try to govern, and I would argue they try to govern not just for blue cities and blue states, but for red cities and red states too. They try to govern for conservatives. As a matter of fact, you can easily make the argument that much of President Biden's legislative agenda, the positivity, has been impacted in red states. Okay? They at least make a sincere effort to do it. Republicans will not do it. They will say something on Monday passionately with full chest, just shouting it from the rooftops. And then by Wednesday, say the exact opposite, and then tell you they actually never said that thing on Monday. There's a fake news. When you show them the clips, it doesn't matter. They pivot. And that I just, as soon as it became apparent that Donald Trump wanted the immigration crisis, the southern border crisis, those are his words, as a wedge issue, I was actually kind of surprised that, if anything, the Republicans in the Senate, like James Lankford, the architect of this border bill, didn't fold as quickly. Yeah. If anything, I was kind of shocked that he,
to this day, stands up for it. Yeah, 2 examples of that flip-flop you were talking about, and this could send me into a meltdown. Okay, a liberal snowflake meltdown. It could do it. I'm honest, all right? The first being, they said, we're not going to send aid to Ukraine because, why? We have to, quote unquote, secure the border. And we already talked about the border thing. You don't have to grant the premise to them that, they opened the border. No, they didn't. But they said we have to secure the border. We have to do legislation on the border before we can send aid to Ukraine. Aid desperately needs to get to Ukraine. Then the Democratic senators and Republicans went, all right, fine. Some bipartisan Republicans got together, Biden, Schumer, other people, and they came up with this legislation that is super, super conservative in the wish list items. And then they go, oh no, we can't do that. Then afterwards, Mike Johnson gets asked why they're not going to do aid to Ukraine. And he says, because we have to act on the border first. But no, wait. You're the Speaker of the House. You refuse to take up legislation on the border. And you can't say that that's because it was a liberal, woke, socialist, Marxist, communist piece of legislation, because again, the Border Patrol Union endorsed it aggressively. That's crazy. The second example, on Trump's social media feed, this is away from the border conversation, he posted a post that I read so many times that I've memorized the notable part of it, calling for the termination of the Constitution. A massive fraud of this type magnitude allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. That's the statement. It's still there. I have the link saved, and I sent it to a bunch of conservatives. He called for the termination of the Constitution. Then a few posts later, he posts a lot, so a few days later, so a lot of posts later, he says, the fake news is saying that I said terminate the Constitution, and I didn't. Both posts are still up. What?
Again, time, record, history, none of that matters. It's all fake news. I've said it before. Republicans in American politics, you use a video game as a metaphor, they play on the easiest difficulty with all the cheat codes enabled. Stuff just doesn't matter. Like their record, their prior positions, their history, none of it matters. It is all what is convenient in the moment, and that's the launch pad. And you know what's sad? There are even more clips of Neil Cavuto having to confront this fact.
Thank you for doing that. I completely forgot. Here's another one.
Let's restrain that bureaucracy. And I think that'll be better for markets, better for Trump, better for Americans, better for prosperity. We just need Republicans to lead.
But our Republicans are not leading, and no offense to you, sir. I mean, you guys look like the Keystone Cops. You can't agree on anything, and there's now everyone wants, the speaker's head. I don't know where you stand on that. But to add insult to injury, then the president comes out to say on the border he's got some ideas ahead of his State of the Union address where he might take executive actions, executive orders, maybe undoing some of the ones that he signed the day he became president. Now, some of your colleagues are going after him and say you can't do that, even though they said you have the power to do this. So he is going to do this. It's confusing because he said he wasn't going to do it. I'm just wondering, is he getting the better of you on the PR front? Not that that should matter, but it seems to matter.
I don't know if I love it or hate it, but the phenomenon is fascinating, to say the least, of Republicans. You heard Cavuto there, but even Chip Roy has notably gone on the House floor and been like, what am I supposed to campaign on? We've done nothing. We've done nothing. One thing. Name one thing we've done. And it's like, yes. Now, his prescriptions for what those things should be will be
terrible.
But at least he notices MAGA, Chip, I think he endorsed DeSantis initially, but you're going to eventually endorse Trump. We all know it. And that's the thing. That's what we've been warning you about. The people that you hate the most, Chip, sir, have been the most correct about what's happening to your party. And it's causing that aggravating situation. Oh, sure, it's fun whenever Trump, points you out and says, Chip Roy, we love him in the state of Texas, and when everything is going fine and whatever. It's not so fun when you can't even do anything in Congress because of the ridiculous anti-governance stance of MAGA.
Yeah, so as a reminder, this iteration of Congress, ever since Republicans took command of the House of Representatives, is the second least productive iteration of Congress in U.S. history, surpassed only, and you could make the argument for this, for the iteration of Congress that was there at the beginning of the Great Depression, and they only met for 4 months, right? So you could easily make the case that pound for pound, this iteration of Congress is infinitely
Yeah.
less productive.
By time.
So Chip Roy is right, but here's the reality. He's contributing to it in his own way too, because he's part of the far right element within the House Republican Conference. But the fact of the matter is, folks, and this is where again I go back to, regardless of where you fall on feelings, if you at least accept the premise, which you should, that government's here to stay, it's not going anywhere. We are going to have a government of some type, and you probably want it to be functional. Then the rational thing to do is vote Democrat, regardless of where your policy prescriptions are, because they're the only ones who can run a government. When Republicans are elected, they can't get anything done. They can't run a lemonade stand. If you had a Republican run lemonade stand, you turn away and you look back, the whole thing would be on fire in the distance it took. I digress.
Yeah.
And no lemonade. No lemonade. They wouldn't produce
You
lemonade.
drink it, you're like, it's bleach? You're
like, what did
Trump
it
says
would be
for COVID. It's Donald's favorite COVID tonic, okay? It's Clorox. You just take a couple of... Whatever. Well, that's exactly... This is what gets me. I talk to people, out in
You
the
do?
world, and I'm
You
like,
famously
what do you think about politics? Just random, not even Trump support, just random people, okay? And I can't help myself. I have to ask them about politics, just especially if I know they're not really keeping up with politics. But people who vote, and
they're like, "Sir, this is a Wendy's. Just take it."
Right. I'm like, wait.
What about the Inflation Reduction
There's
Act?
no one behind me, okay? Joe Biden's been the most successful president in modern American history. Right. I'm like, hey, I have a YouTube channel. You should watch it. So no. Let me explain my point. Dang it.
Sorry.
Stop being a funny guy. What was my point? Oh, and a lot of times the reaction I get is, Trump, he's kind of a mess, but I do like a lot of Republican policies. And used to, I would go, interesting, let's debate, and we would debate. Now, my question is, what policies? What do you mean?
Where are they? Can
Name
you show them
a policy? And they'll say, I think Democrats want to ban all guns, so I don't like that. Who? What Democrat? What are you talking about? We're trying to get universal background checks. We can't even get to a conversation about anything that would be even close to like strong regulation of guns. It's ridiculous. So again, how are we in this moment in this country where there's a chance Republicans could keep the House or something? I think they'll lose it, but they could keep the House, take the Senate on a policy-less platform as political people. What?
Again, I argue it's because for decades, and it's gotten worse, I think, in the past decade, we've just graded them on a curve. And listen, I understand the reflex, this idea of enlightened centrism and both sidesism and creating this artificial balance. It's comfortable, right? It's easy. Like, how many times, I don't know if you ever heard this, but like when you would ask people about their political positions, if they were felt uncertain, they would say something to the effect of, I'm socially liberal, fiscally conservative. And the reason that they would say this is because it's okay. Just go ahead, right? Aim for the trash. It's because I believe, and I used to say it when I was like in middle school, right? In early high school, before I really started to get informed about politics. Of course, I was also growing up in a rural red state, but it felt like a way to split the difference where I could say that, I see both sides, right? That way you're less likely to offend both sides or either side. I think that has actually contributed to the problem, because the fact of the matter is, again, and it doesn't mean that you have to believe the Democrats are perfect, because they're not by any stretch of the imagination, but there are some situations in life, some political and military conflicts in life, where there is relatively speaking, a clear hero and a clear villain, right? You can look at it. You look at the Second World War. You can look at the American Civil War. You can look at the Revolutionary, right? They have all sorts of things where there is just one side that's so much clearly worse than the other. And when you look at the elected Republican Party, and I am referring to conservative leaders and Republican elected officials, folks, there's just no contest, man. There's just no contest here. And we have to stop just defaulting to, wanting to responsibly govern and wanting to tear government down are equally valid positions. They're not. It's sorry, I know, but that's Leon. I know.
It's so true. And think about any historical major event. Almost always, there's a side that retrospectively you would have just wanted to be on. So it doesn't mean you dishonestly manipulate facts in their favor or anything. It's that you acknowledge yourself to be on that side or to be a part of a movement so that you can then act in a unified manner to further your goals. And you can say, okay, we're all synced on these principles. Let's now go act on them together and work. And I know it feels honorable to say, probably our audiences don't say this, but
hopefully not. Please don't.
I know one person in my life who watches the show who refers to them this way. So this is to you. If you find yourself saying that fiscally conservative, socially liberal, which, what does that mean? Fiscally, you mean overseeing worse economies for the last century and
blowing up the national debt? Yeah.
That's more than
Donald Trump added more to the debt, $8 trillion than any single-term president in modern history. And he swore he was going to wipe it out.
Yep. And even before COVID, it was a trend that Republican presidents would oversee larger increases to the deficit than Democratic presidents. So fiscally conservative means just worse, okay?
Right. Well, yeah, what's that even mean? Republicans are not fiscally conservative.
Right. What is that? It just, okay. It's because fiscally conservative in your life is good. You know what I mean? Like with your...
Don't spend more than you take in, right?
Sure. Yeah. Fair. But the other one I get is, I agree with a little bit from both sides, which in people's heads means I'm not like a radical extremist, which good. Don't be a radical extremist. You don't be like communist all the way crazy. Great. Or all the way fascist. But that doesn't
point
put
my
you,
direction. I'm sorry. Why'd you
that's just like this guy. He's faking you out.
Yeah.
But it's not true that in this current moment being moderate or even in the middle of the political spectrum puts you anywhere in the Republican Party. In the Democratic Party, there's more conservative Democrats, more liberal Democrats, and they all actually care about governing. You have to leave it there. Can you plug your channel?
Yeah, youtube.com/@ponderingpolitics. Luke, always good to collaborate with you, buddy.